What happens when two strong-willed women clash on live television with millions watching? You won't believe what unfolds when a simple discussion about royal privacy spirals completely out of control, ending with one guest storming off, set in a dramatic exit that has everyone talking. Last night's episode of Loose Women began like any other, but what viewers witnessed was anything but ordinary. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, had agreed to appear on the show to discuss her latest charitable initiatives and advocacy work. The atmosphere in the studio seemed cordial as the cameras rolled, with Denise Welch offering her usual warm welcome to the guest. The other panelists sat poised with their questions, unaware they were about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations in the show's history. Meghan appeared composed and polished, her signature smile firmly in place as she took her seat opposite the panel. Dressed in a sleek navy blazer, her hair styled in loose waves that caught the studio lights, she exuded confidence. The conversation began smoothly with casual remarks about her recent projects and life in California. Denise, known for her direct yet personable style, seemed genuinely interested as Meghan spoke about women's empowerment and mental health awareness. "It's wonderful to have you here with us today," Denise began, her tone professional but friendly. "You've been quite vocal about the importance of speaking your truth, especially after everything you've been through. Our viewers are interested in how you've handled the intense media scrutiny." "Thank you for having me, Denise," Meghan replied, still smiling though her shoulders tightened slightly. "I think it's crucial that we all have the right to tell our own stories, especially when so much misinformation circulates. Harry and I have always believed in being authentic and transparent." The conversation continued pleasantly, touching on her podcast, charitable work, and advocacy. Meghan spoke passionately, her voice calm and confident. But as the segment went on, Denise's questions began to sharpen. "Now, Meghan," Denise said, leaning forward, "there's been quite a bit of discussion about your family's approach to privacy. You've spoken about wanting privacy for your children, yet you've also shared your experiences publicly. Some people find that contradictory. How do you reconcile those two positions?" A subtle shift filled the room. Meghan's smile faltered for a split second. "I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what privacy means in this context," she answered, her tone more deliberate. "We're not asking for anonymity. We're asking for the right to share our story on our own terms, rather than having lies and half-truths spread by the tabloids. There's a huge difference between choosing to speak and being invaded." Denise nodded thoughtfully, but pressed on. "Surely you understand the public's confusion. When you do interviews, documentaries, and podcasts, it can look like you want it both ways. Attention when it suits you, privacy when it doesn't." The tension in the studio was now unmistakable. Meghan straightened, her composure starting to strain. The other panelists exchanged uneasy glances as cameras zoomed in. "That's exactly the kind of narrative certain media push," Meghan said sharply. "This idea that we're hypocritical for wanting control over our story while protecting our children. No parent should have to deal with what we've endured. Photographers outside our home, drones over our property." Denise, undeterred, kept her voice even. "I understand the frustration, but some of your choices have sparked controversy. The timing of certain revelations, the way stories have been presented. It's led to criticism, hasn't it?" The question hit a nerve. Meghan's polished expression cracked slightly. "Controversial? To whom?" she shot back, her eyes flashing. "To the same people who've tried to tear me down since day one? The same media outlets that print lies about me and my family? When other public figures share their stories, they're praised for bravery. When I do it, it's called calculated or controversial." The studio fell silent except for the quiet hum of equipment. The panelists hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Denise pressed forward. I think the difference lies in the specifics of what you've shared. For instance, the allegations about racism within the royal family. Those were serious claims made on a global platform. Some felt it was unfair since the people involved couldn't respond in the same way. Meghan's hands trembled slightly as she tried to maintain her composure. The emotional control that defined her public persona was slipping. Unfair? She repeated, disbelief in her tone. What's unfair is being silenced while facing racism and discrimination. What's unfair is being told to smile and bear it while your mental health suffers. What's unfair is watching the institution you married into fail to protect you and your unborn child from hatred and bigotry. The room held its breath. The clash between professionalism and personal pain had reached its breaking point, and the moment would soon become one of the most talked-about exchanges in loose women history. The confrontation had reached its peak, with both women locked in a fierce battle of wills. Denise, sensing she was on the brink of creating the kind of explosive television moment viewers would be discussing for months, decided to push further. But surely you knew what you were getting into when you married into the royal family, she said, her tone edged with challenge. This isn't new territory. We've seen how the press treats royal women. Diana went through it. Sarah Ferguson went through it. Even Kate's faced her share of difficult coverage. What made you think your experience would be different? The mention of Diana landed like a blow. Meghan's expression tightened, her composure cracking as anger flushed her face. For the first time since the interview began, her polished calm shattered, revealing raw emotion underneath. Her eyes blazed as she leaned forward, pointing directly at Denise. How dare you compare my situation to anyone else's? You have no idea what I went through, what my family went through. You think you can just throw Diana's name around like you understand what it's like to be hunted by the press while carrying a child? The studio fell silent. Cameras zoomed in from every angle, the crew realizing they were witnessing something unforgettable. Denise, unshaken, remained poised. I'm not comparing anyone's pain, she said evenly, but I am questioning the narrative. You've built your entire post-royal brand around being a victim. And frankly, some people are tired of hearing how hard your life has been while you're living in a mansion in Montecito. The words hit their mark. Meghan's face went pale, then flushed deep red. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Victim? She repeated, her voice breaking. You think I'm playing the victim? I was driven to the point of having suicidal thoughts because of the treatment I received. And you're sitting there dismissing that like it's some kind of performance? Do you have any idea how dangerous that kind of rhetoric is? Denise sat straighter, her tone hardening. I'm not dismissing anything, Meghan. I'm asking the questions viewers want answered. If you can't handle being challenged on your public statements, maybe you shouldn't be making them. The other panelists looked panicked, glancing toward the control booth, where producers frantically debated whether to cut to commercial. But the cameras kept rolling, live, unfiltered, and impossible to stop. Can't handle being challenged? Meghan echoed, her voice dripping with disbelief. I've been challenged every single day since I entered public life. I've been called every name imaginable, watched my father sell stories to tabloids, endured racist attacks that would have broken most people. And you think I can't handle you? Denise's professional mask began to strain. What I think, she replied coolly, is that you've made a career out of grievance. Every interview, every appearance, every project centers around how badly you've been treated. At what point do you take responsibility for your own choices? The studio went deathly still. Meghan's mouth fell open as she processed the words. When she spoke again, her voice was low and trembling with fury. Take responsibility? She repeated. For being black in an institution that wasn't ready for someone like me? For standing up for myself when I was being destroyed by people who look exactly like you? For refusing to stay silent when my husband's family threw me to the wolves to protect themselves? The air in the room grew thick with tension. The racial undertone of her words hung heavily between them, drawing a collective breath from the audience. Denise's expression hardened, her restraint finally slipping. I would ask these same questions of anyone who had made the choices you've made, said the things you've said, and caused the damage you've caused to people I respect. People you respect. Meghan laughed bitterly, a sharp, humorless sound. You mean the same royal family that protected a man accused of serious crimes while hanging me out to dry? The same institution that leaked stories about me to distract from their own scandals? Those are the people you respect? The reference to Prince Andrew sent a visible shockwave through the panel. Even in the heat of their exchange, both women seemed to realize Meghan had just crossed a line that perhaps should have remained untouched. Denise's eyes flashed with a mix of outrage and opportunity. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Denise shot back, leaning forward aggressively. You can't help yourself, can you? Even here, even now, you're throwing around accusations and innuendo. You're making serious implications about people who can't defend themselves in the same forum. It's reckless and unfair. Unfair? Meghan's voice rose, all pretense of calm now gone. What's unfair is being silenced while watching your reputation get destroyed. What's unfair is being told to protect an institution that never protected you. What's unfair is sitting here listening to you lecture me about fairness when you've already decided who I am and what my motives are. The confrontation had reached a fever pitch, both women now standing facing each other across the coffee table that separated them like a battle line. The other panelists shrank back in their chairs, visibly uncomfortable yet unable to look away. You know what I think? Denise said, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I think you can't stand that the British public saw through your act. I think you're angry that your fairy tale didn't play out the way you planned, and now you're determined to burn everything down rather than admit that maybe, just maybe, some of the criticism you've received was justified. The words hit Meghan like physical blows. Her face flickered through shock, hurt, and fury before settling into cold rage. My act? Her voice trembled with effort to stay composed. You think caring about my mental health was an act? You think crying over the loss of my relationship with my father was an act? You think fearing for my safety and my children's safety was an act? I think you're very good at playing the victim when it suits you, Denise replied, without backing down. And even better at making sure everyone knows how much you're suffering while living a life millions would give anything for. The studio fell silent. The air between them crackled with hostility. It was clear they had gone far beyond the bounds of a normal television interview into something deeply personal and volatile. Then Meghan spoke the words that would make headlines around the world. You know what, Denise? You're absolutely right about one thing. I am angry. I'm angry that women like you, who should understand what it's like to be torn apart by the media, are the ones leading the charge against me. I'm angry that I ever thought coming on this show would be different. And I'm angry that I wasted my time trying to have an honest conversation with someone who clearly invited me here just to ambush me. Her voice was calm now, cold, deliberate, cutting. She began gathering her belongings, her movements sharp and precise as the studio watched in stunned silence. Denise, however, wasn't finished. Oh, so now it's an ambush because I asked direct questions about your public statements? Because I didn't just sit here and nod along while you played the martyr? That's not an ambush, Meghan. That's journalism. Journalism? Meghan spun around, her eyes blazing. Is that what you call this character assassination? This isn't journalism. It's a hit job. And frankly, I expected better from someone who claims to support women's rights. But I guess that support only extends to women who stay in their lane and don't challenge the status quo. The accusation hit hard. Denise's face flushed as she stepped closer, her composure cracking. Don't you dare lecture me about women's rights. I've been fighting for women long before you were in the public eye. The difference is, I don't expect special treatment or immunity from criticism just because I'm a woman. Special treatment? Meghan's laugh was harsh and bitter. You think wanting basic human decency is special treatment? You think not wanting to be subjected to racist harassment is asking for immunity? The delusion is staggering. The racial element reignited the tension. This time, Denise snapped completely. Her professional facade vanished as she pointed an accusatory finger at Meghan. There you go again. Every time someone disagrees with you, every time someone questions your choices, you play the race card. It's manipulative, it's dishonest, and frankly, it's insulting to people who have faced real discrimination. The studio erupted in gasps from the audience. Even the other panelists, who had remained silent through most of the confrontation, looked stunned by the direction the argument had taken. Meghan stood frozen for a moment, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Real discrimination, she repeated softly. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried clearly through the suddenly silent studio. You just said that the racism I experienced wasn't real. You just dismissed the harassment, the death threats, the constant attacks on my character and my background as not being real discrimination. Do you understand what you just said? For the first time since the confrontation began, Denise seemed to realize she might have gone too far. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, but her pride and anger wouldn't let her retreat. What I'm saying, Denise replied, is that you use allegations of racism to shut down legitimate criticism. You weaponize your identity to avoid accountability. Weaponize my identity? Meghan repeated, disbelief dripping from every word. My identity isn't a weapon, Denise. It's who I am. And the fact that you can sit there and tell me that the racism I experienced isn't real, while simultaneously proving exactly the kind of attitudes I was talking about, is beyond ironic. It's tragic. The confrontation had reached a point of no return. Both women were now locked in a battle that had moved far beyond the original topic of discussion into deeply personal territory. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what would undoubtedly become one of the most talked-about television moments of the year. You want to know what's tragic? Denise shot back, her voice rising to match Meghan's intensity. What's tragic is watching someone with your privileges and opportunities constantly painting themselves as a victim. What's tragic is the way you've damaged relationships and hurt people who cared about you, all while claiming the moral high ground. Privileges? Meghan's voice cracked with emotion. You think being subjected to years of abuse and harassment is a privilege? You think having my mental health destroyed to the point where I considered ending my life is a privilege? You think watching helplessly as my family was torn apart by lies and manipulation is a privilege? The mention of suicidal thoughts seemed to cut through the tension. Several panelists looked uncomfortable, and even some audience members appeared visibly moved by the raw pain in Meghan's voice. But Denise, perhaps sensing she had gone too far to back down now, pressed on. I think you've made choices that have consequences, she said, her tone slightly less aggressive but still firm. And instead of owning those consequences, you blame everyone else. You blame the media. You blame the royal family. You blame the British public. Everyone, except yourself. Meghan stared at Denise for a long moment, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to steady her breathing. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but laced with cold finality. You know what? You're absolutely right about one thing. I do blame people. I blame the ones who turned my pregnancy into a spectacle. I blame the ones who made my son's safety a secondary concern to their own agendas. I blame those who stood by and watched while I was systematically destroyed. And I blame the people who continue to perpetuate the same toxic narratives even now. She picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder, her movements deliberate and final. But most of all, I blame myself for thinking that coming here today would be any different from every other ambush interview I've endured. I blame myself for believing there might be one British television host who could see past the headlines and actually listen. Denise watched her prepare to leave, but couldn't resist one final jab. Running away again? That seems to be your pattern when things get difficult. The comment stopped Meghan in her tracks. She turned slowly, her face a mask of controlled fury that was somehow more intimidating than her earlier anger. "Running away," she said quietly. "I moved across an ocean to protect my family from people exactly like you. I gave up everything I knew, everything I was building, to escape the kind of toxic environment you're perpetuating right here, right now. You gave up a life of service and duty to become a celebrity in Hollywood," Denise countered, refusing to back down despite the charged atmosphere. "Don't dress it up as some noble sacrifice. Service?" Meghan's voice rose one final time. "I was performing more royal engagements than almost anyone else in that family, while pregnant, while being constantly attacked. But that's not the story you want, is it? You want the version where I'm the problem, where I destroyed everything. Because that's easier than admitting the institution you're defending is fundamentally broken." She took a step toward the exit, then paused and looked directly into the camera, addressing the audience at home with quiet conviction. "To everyone watching who might be going through something similar, who might be facing harassment, discrimination, or abuse, please don't let people like this convince you your experiences aren't valid. Don't let anyone tell you that speaking your truth makes you a victim or a troublemaker. And don't let anyone gaslight you into believing that asking for basic respect and dignity is asking for too much." With that, she turned and walked toward the studio exit, her heels clicking sharply against the floor in the silence that filled the room. "Meghan." "We're still live," Denise called after her, but Meghan didn't turn back. As she reached the studio door, she paused one final time and looked at Denise, who stood behind the desk, visibly shaken by how quickly everything had spiraled. "You know what the real tragedy is, Denise? You had the chance to have a real conversation about real issues, and instead you chose to recycle the same tired narratives that have been used to silence women for generations. I hope the ratings were worth it." With that final, devastating remark, Meghan Markle pushed through the studio doors and disappeared, leaving behind a stunned silence that seemed to last forever. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Denise's shocked expression and the uneasy faces of the other panelists as they struggled to process what had just happened. Denise, visibly shaken but trying to maintain composure, turned to the camera. "Well, that was unexpected. We'll be right back after this break to discuss what just happened and take your calls." As the show cut to commercial, everyone in the studio knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. A confrontation that would be analyzed, debated, and replayed for months to come. The heated exchange between Denise Welch and Meghan Markle had delivered one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history.